We'll call the Election Commission meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commission Member Whitman.
Excused.
Here.
Here. Germaini.
Here.
Lamore.
Present.
Felder. Mayor Clark.
Present. So we have commission action this evening, Clerk, if you could, please.
Yes, and we just have one brief item. I'm bringing to you tonight the plan for early voting and the proposed location for our early voting site. According to the enabling legislation, the legislative body of each city and township must designate the location for the early voting. So I'm proposing that City Hall be the location. Our plan is to operate as a single municipality, not going in with the county or with another city or township. This is a plan that really has been developed in conjunction with the county clerk, Frenchtown, Monroe Town, City of Monroe, Bedford. We're all going to be standalone. I believe there are one or two smaller townships that are going to be standalone, and then the rest of them are going to partner up with one or two. The whole idea was to keep it in the geographical location that the municipality was located in, rather than making the voters have to travel to be able to exercise their right to early vote. Early vote is not just going to be people coming in, voters coming in and asking for a ballot and voting and then submitting it. It's also going to be an option for our absentee voters. So they will still be able to request an absentee ballot, take it home, take their time, vote the way they always vote, utilizing the absentee ballot, and then they will have the option of bringing it back to, in our case, City Hall, and go to the early voting site and be able to tabulate it. Now, it's not as simple as that. There's going to be a lot of steps in between, but for the purposes of this evening, they will be coming here where we will establish what will essentially look like a precinct. There will be a chairperson from the community who volunteers to work as an election inspector, 2 to 3 election inspectors, and the precinct, the early voting location precinct, will be open for 9 consecutive days, beginning the second Saturday before the election, for 8 hours each day, including President's Day. We will be open on President's Day. So what we need from the commission tonight is to make a recommendation to council. The council establishes the City Hall as the early voting site for the city of Monroe. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners for Clerk Lavoie? So you're just looking for a motion?
Just a motion to make a recommendation.
Councilman Lamore?
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the Monroe City Council to approve the City of Monroe's early voting plan and early voting site by resolution at the December 4th, 2023 regular City Council meeting.
Motion by Commissioner Lamore, support by Commissioner Germaini for the resolution regarding the early voting plan. Other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Vining.
Yes.
Steelgrave.
Yes.
Germaini.
Yes.
Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.
All right. I don't have any further comments.
Commissioner comments for the Election Commission meeting? Seeing none, is there any comments from those present here this evening regarding the Election Commission meeting at this time? Any comments from the public? Seeing none?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Lamore, supported by Commissioner Germaini to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Vining.
Yes.
Steelgrave.
Yes.
Germaini.
Yes.
Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Thank you. And I guess we'll move on. So as you're...
Okay, I'm ready.
We'll open the City Council work session meeting. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder.
Present.
Whitman.
Excused.
Steelgrave.
Here.
Vining.
Here.
Germaini. Lamore.
Present.
Mayor Clark.
Present. And our first item is
Public comment.
public comment. So this is the City Council meeting. There's agenda items. I'll just, as a heads up for those present, is regarding the National Community Survey result presentation we'll have this evening, but also the refuse collection procedure, discussion of possible changes to that. So I'll ask if there's any Comments from those present here this evening. Any public comments from those present here this evening for this meeting? Seeing none. Clerk, next item.
The next item is under the work session agenda, item 4379, National Community Survey Results Presentation.
Manager Robinson, your items for this evening.
Well, Mayor and City Council members, I'd like to invite Director Mark Cochran to introduce our guest speaker, Ms. Florence Buchanan, regarding the National Community Survey results, and she will provide a presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council, Mark Cochran, Director of Economic and Community Development. This evening, we're pleased to bring before you results from the National Community Survey that you had commissioned and approved last year. The survey was completed this year, and we contracted with Florence Buchanan of Customer Experience 360. Florence is a familiar and friendly face to many of us, particularly recently in the past several years, she's assisted with our customer experience training of our staff here at City Hall and across the city, but also back in 2018 when we did this survey the first time. And just for purposes of recollection, when we completed the National Community Survey back in 2018, one of City Council's goals at that time was about civic engagement and citizen participation, and wanted to hear from our residents on how they feel about the delivery of city services, what they feel the priorities for community development and quality of life are in our city. And shortly after that, we presented the survey results from 2018. Really, that year was meant to serve as a baseline to get a pulse from our residents on, at that time, it was 8 facets of community livability, looking at everything from parks and safety to economic development to delivery of utility services. And our intent all along was to conduct that survey again in 3 years to see, after that baseline data was collected, whether we moved the mark and whether we moved up, whether we moved down. And it's very interesting perusing the draft results that we received to look at some of the initiatives that the City Council had adopted, approved, and passed, as well as some of the millages and other improvements that the residents approved, to see how their sentiments changed with this year's results. And so keeping in line with your council goals and objectives that you adopted at the beginning of your term, Council C was about communicating with our residents. And so first and foremost, by asking about how they feel about the job that we're doing and what their priorities are, I think we'll garner some very good feedback. I will caution you and warn you, Florence's presentation is just a very broad overview. Tonight you should have a binder that presents all of the data. It's a lot of data. It can be overwhelming. It's very useful information. At the end of the presentation, I'll come back up and talk about how we recommend using the results that we got from this survey going forward in the years to come. So with that, I'll turn it over to Florence to kick off the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Florence, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. First of all, good evening to the Honorable Mayor and Council and department heads. And I'd like to say that I'm very pleased to have worked the second time with the City of Monroe on their community survey. So each one of you have a binder, and if we need more binders created, we can do that. But as Mark mentioned, this is just, you should have this in front of you, okay? This document includes the entire survey and the entire survey report. Now, as Mark mentioned as well, there's a lot of data. So what I did was I aggregated 7 reports for you, which I think will make it easier for you to digest as you're going through your goal planning and strategic planning versus getting online and weeding through a lot of data that you may not particularly understand or be clear. Maybe there are some of you could understand that, but it was kind of, over my head, some of it briefly. Anyway, so I hope you find that useful and very informative. So let's get started. So I just want to give you a little bit of history about the research companies. In 2018, as Mark mentioned, we had our first survey, and that was the National Research Center. They were well respected in their space. In 2019, they merged with Polco, another research firm. The difference is Polco added the digital engagement for communities and municipalities that have the opportunity to create online communities. So people who are residents who initially responded to the survey, and if they gave their email, then you have created a little community of people that you could actually follow up in more depth on some of the questions or create new ones. So that was the advantage of Polco and the National Research Center actually combining. So why do we have this engagement? As we all know, I'm just going to briefly go through that. Monitor residents' opinions. We know everybody's got an opinion about something, which is great. You want to engage with your residents. A measurement of government performance, budgeting, as Mark had mentioned, strategic planning, and of course, benchmarking against other communities, whether they're similar in size, not necessarily geographic location, but similar in size and similar demographics. So this year we started, the survey was mailed on February the 17th, and the survey closed on April the 7th. Now, to make sure that that the survey was only completed by the residents of the city of Monroe, Mark did send the file from the county, the GIS, with the city boundaries. Because as we know, our adjacent communities, people think that is in Monroe, and they probably would have responded to the survey. That was the same in 2018. The GIS boundaries were defined. The mailing approach was similar, except in 2018, there were 3 touch points. There was just a basic, the survey is coming. Polco did not do that. They only had 2. Everything else was the same, but that third one in 2018 was, it's coming. And I think that possibly could have some effect on the results, which you'll see that in a second. The probability of those people who were households randomly selected was 2,800. The non-probability of the survey was the fact that the city posted the survey in social media and or their website for people to take. But they also had to identify where they lived, whether it was in the city or without. And sometimes that can be confusing to people. They think Monroe is the contiguous area. And then the results are scientific, and they were blended because once Polco, as in 2018, when they analyzed the results, the open survey and the scientific survey were about the same, so they were able to blend it. It didn't really make a difference whether people took the specific survey that they were mailed or asked to participate in, or the open survey, so that was good. And then the results were weighted to reflect Monroe, and then 95% confidence in the results, plus or minus 5%. So these are the statistics for comparison 2018 to 2023. You can see that they actually pulled more than 2,800, 300 more in 2023. The responses, though, you can see were less. In 2018, we had 24%. In 2023, we had 15. And Mark and I talked about this, and I think one of the reasons, there's a couple of reasons that we can assume affected this. The time of the year. In 2018, the survey went out in May. This year, it was more in the winter, February. That could have something to do with it. We're not quite sure on that. Having to, at an option, provide your email address to create that digital online community. There's so much fraud with people asking for your email addresses. I remember there were actually 6 or 7 calls that went to Mark, and he forwarded them to me, and I personally called all 6 of the residents. I actually knew a couple of them. It was kind of interesting, but they had a little bit of trouble trying to understand how to sign on and take the survey. But then a couple of them said, you know what, is this legitimate? Is this for real? Because we all get these bogus telephone calls, so that could have played a part into it. And then the extra touch point, and people are just leery of you asking questions. And everybody's asking a survey now, even though I believe in surveys, but every company, every organization is asking for a survey. So that could have affected the results. But as I told Mark, 15% were interested. They were not incentivized. They were interested in giving their opinions on this survey to the city of Monroe, which I think that's great. And then the results were blended, and then of course the margin of error was the same. So the livability factors, what does that mean? It's the quality of life. What do people think about living in Monroe? All aspects of their lives. You can see the difference there. Now, in 2018, we had 8. In 2023, because of the new merger with Polco and the National Research Center, we had 10. And let's start with number 4, and I'll show you the difference here. So built environment actually transferred over to community design. Recreation and wellness moved down to number 9, health and wellness. And then recreation stayed with parks and recreation. Education and enrichment, arts and culture were added to that, number 7. And then community engagement was actually expanded to inclusivity and engagement, which I thought that was great. And then there were 2 new ones, health and wellness and utilities. And you'll see how those results are in just a few minutes. So then those 10 were aggregated into the pillars of focus, which there are 3. Community characteristics like parks, infrastructure, governance, city services, water, trash pickup, sewer maintenance, and the participation is, let me move this over here. Basically, how well or what did citizens actually participate, contact the government, or just advocate for a cause that they believed in. So overall, though, the quality of life in Monroe, 53% of the respondents said, you know what, it's pretty nice to live in Monroe, good and or excellent. So I think that's something that's, more than half of your residents saying this is a nice community to live in. The community characteristics, though, I think you'll be pretty pleased with these. People feel safe downtown, safe in their neighborhoods. And some people think that they're going to live in Monroe for the next 5 years. Now, 5 is 5, 5 is not 10, but that's some longevity. And then you have people feel safe from national calamities, fire, flood, and the neighborhood that they live in is a nice place to live. And number 5 is, I think it's important, is the preservation of the historical and the cultural characteristics of the community. The lowest ratings, though, were, and this kind of continuously is to be an issue here, the vibrancy of downtown. And with all the businesses that are opening up, I think in the next time we go around with the survey, that's going to change. There's just so many things that are happening downtown, which were not in place whenever we did this survey. Shopping opportunities, many more businesses downtown. Availability of mental health care, and then employment opportunities. And you're going to see a little bit later how important the economy is to the local residents. We'll get to that soon. Now we're going to talk about the benchmarks from 2018 to 2023 for community characteristics. Overall quality of new development was up 14%. Business establishments up 12, shopping opportunities, even though it didn't rate that high, there still was a 12% uptick. So that's encouraging. And the openness of people of diverse backgrounds, I think was important too. That was up 12%. And neighborhood residents, just living in a good neighborhood, was up 12%. Now, there's always an upside and there's always a downside. So the downside is opportunities decreased by 14% for education, culture, and the arts. Ease of walking was down 9. Ease of travel by bicycle was down by 7. And I know that's going to change. And opportunities to attend cultural arts, music, and activities was down by 7. And special events and festivals by 7%. So what is the definition of those particular activities for people? Maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think there's a lot of people who still, the signature event that we had for 18 years, I still think that's important to some people. Mayor Bob, you get calls on it. And even though I know the Parks and Recs does an outstanding job throughout the year with special events and getting people to come downtown and activity, that department works tremendous. I still think that the people are hoping that maybe we can do that whole thing again. Not that that's the city's responsibility, it isn't, but because it was in the city, I think people just assume that it's the city, event. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong. And then let's talk about the governance. Now, in 2018, public library services and fire services rated number 1 and number 2. But look at number 3. Overall customer service provided by employees. I am so excited about that metric. And you're going to see the percentage because in 2018, before this survey in 2018 was conducted, I did contract with the city to provide customer service training for the entire organization, except we did not do the police and we did not train the fire department. But all the other employees participated in customer service and customer experience training. So I am so happy to see that this is now, and you'll see in just a minute, this is a positive metric that are actually tied with police, city park, and sewer systems. And then also another top 5 rating is garbage collection, yard waste, and then ambulance and EMT. But the lowest ratings, with the 2020 millage, street repair, and I'm sure that's going to be an uptick next year too. In the next 3 years, we do the survey because of the millage. And then we have economic development, didn't necessarily have a high rating, land use, planning and zoning, code enforcement, and recreation and health centers. Okay, so look at the comparison of the trends. 12%, Julie. I'm so excited. 12% uptick in customer service. People are rating the employees that they're providing the customer experience an increase from 2018 to 2023 by 12%. Snow removal was 11, street repair 10, code enforcement 9, and street cleaning and crime prevention increased by 9%, which was great too. The downward trends were recycling, traffic enforcement, public service, utility billing, and bus or transit service. Doesn't mean these services are bad, it's just from 2018 to 2023, there is a perception that they're not as good as they were in the previous window. And participation, this means is a resident, am I engaging with my community? Am I engaging with the local government? So the top 5 were walked or biked instead of driving. I think that's good for the environment. Contacted the city for help, volunteered with the group or an activity, carpooled, and campaigned or advocated for a cause. Lowest ratings were public transportation, contacted elected officials, attended a public meeting. Actually, more people watched the meeting versus attending, and campaigned or advocated. Okay, and this particular in participation, the upward trends, this was a very narrow metric here, but there was only a 3% increase for those who called the city for help. Nothing else changed, so that was stagnant there. But but comparing the next section, the downward trends, the walking and biking decreased by 7, and so on and so on. I won't read all those, but you'll see how they all decreased there. Overall, though, in 2013, the benchmark comparisons, the city had 28 more positive ratings. 74 were similar, and 12 received lower ratings overall against all the questions that were asked. Now I'm going to talk about 4 key findings. One was key finding number 1, safety and related services are valued by the Monroe community. Let me just show this next slide here, that 55% of the community, of the people who actually took the survey, said that, we think it's excellent and good overall safety. We feel safe in Monroe, 55%. And some of the service and metrics, fire rated 81, excellent and or good, AMT 70%, police services 72, and fire prevention and education 65. Key finding number 2, the economy is extremely important to a lot of people in the community, as we all know. Inflation is still consistently high. It's difficult to buy a house these days. Overall, the economic health of the city of Monroe is, just one second here, 31%. Only 31% think that the economy in Monroe County is good. They're 45 and poor 24. This next slide shows that in the next 6 months, what people feel the economy will have the effect on their household, and 42% feel it's going to have a negative impact. 4 in 10 rated the cost of living as excellent or good. That's just 40%. And then nearly 9 in 10 feel that economic health of Monroe is a high or medium priority for the next 5 years for the city of Monroe. Key finding number 3 is the natural environment and recreation opportunities. So 60% of the respondents did say that they feel good or excellent about the Parks and Recs and national environment. Key finding number 4 is strengths and weaknesses of the utility infrastructure. So we have here 45% saying that the utility infrastructure is excellent or good. and 55% saying not so good. And that's probably due to the number of storms, trees falling. Not that that's the city's fault, but Mother Nature had some input into that. But that was probably the reason why that's not rating as high as it could be. And then I'm going to next survey. The next slide here is the custom questions. I'm not going to read through all of these, but you will see some benchmarks in just a few here. But these 4 custom questions, now in 2018, there were actually 6. And Mark and I talked about them, and he added a new one, which is the 4th one about housing. But number 1 talks about strategic planning, the priorities. Number 2 will be interaction with citizens acting with the departments. Number 3 is how do you get information about the city, whether it's online or talking to your council person. And then number 4 is new residential development. And this is a good summary of the strategic planning. Remember, this is just an overview. So you see 88% talked about the street surface improvements. And once again, with the millage, that should be, I'm sure that will change in 3 years. Access to recreational opportunities was 78. I'm not going to read all this either, but you can see opening a dog park, which we worked on several years ago, Mark, is only now 37%. But it's important to some people. But you can see based upon these results, what really people are saying is important to them. And then the other was the housing development. I thought this was interesting. The lost downtown are just stunning, and maybe that's what people are referring to about the upper floor apartment rehabilitation, single family, so on and so on. Take a look at that. And now this is very important. I think I'll be very interested in with the council people here, the precinct comparison. This is much more data than what we got the last time in 2018. So I think that's that advantage that Polco brings to the table. They were able to take a much deeper dive. And let me just explain this a little bit. Use my little pointer here. So each of the precincts have a label, A, B, C, D, and so forth. Now let's look at public art. If you go over to precinct 3, you can see that number is 81%. So that really signifies that that's important. Those letters in that cell mean that the 81% precinct 3, that result is statistically significant as compared to all the other letters in that cell. Does that make sense to you guys? I'm not a statistician, okay? So if you look at 81% and you go over to precinct 2, it's 51%. Don't be too concerned about those letters. Just look at the percentages, and you can see by precinct how your residents actually voted. And then the overall average is 54. But you can see in precinct 3 South was very important to that precinct. Public art is very important, whereas in precinct 2, not so much. And then in precinct 3 North, it's only 58%. Don't worry about those letters, whether it's significant or not. Just look at the percentages and how people are actually rating the importance of that particular issue. So in your books, you'll see a much expanded version of this. This is just an example. And then the next slide is the demographic comparison. And once again, I'll explain this to you. So you can see you have the length of residency, and the A's and the B's and the C's, those are just labels. And then the housing tenure, housing unit type, the children in the household, and overall. So for example, once again, don't look at the letters. I'll give you another example, the historic preservation. In more than 20 years, there's a B there, because overall, that particular metric, more than 20 years, was excuse me, I have a hard time saying that word, was statistically different than the first 5 years or less. But as I mentioned, don't pay too much attention to those letters. Just look at the percentages, and I think you will be fine there. And once again, this is just a sample of what you have in your full book, in your full report. So the summary of conclusions, that safety and related services are very important to the City of Monroe community. The economy is another challenge people feel. The residents appreciate the natural and environment opportunities. And even though the citizens value the infrastructure but have concerns about the quality. Now, let me just take you to this report. As I mentioned, Polko, wait a minute, just kind of go off of there. Polko is more about the digital engagement. So this Tableau, if you want this link, you can certainly have it. It takes a deep dive into all this data, so it may kind of have your head spin, but anybody can log on if they have the link and see this information for the city of Monroe. And you can see the tabs have all the, I've aggregated some of this in your books, but you can just see all the information if you're inclined to stay up at night and you have nothing else to do but to read these reports. But I did want to share that with you. Let's get out of that. Okay, wait, just give me a little bit here. Still connected. Okay. So now I'm going to turn this over to Mark, and he is going to talk about what's next.
Thank you, Florence. So what's next? What do we do with all this data? Much like we did back in 2018, we've got a distribution plan. So tonight, City Council, you received a binder full of all of the information, the full presentation, as well as all the data. We're going to distribute it to all the department heads here at the city, as well as do a press release letting people know that the survey results are back. I think there's nothing worse than asking for the people's opinion and then them never receiving the information back. So we'll work with our communications office to let folks know that they can go to the link in the website that Florence just provided where they can see the full results from the survey that they participated in. But what do we do with the data now that we have it? So we want to use this certainly as we look toward the new year. City Council is going to be setting their goals and objectives for the new term. We want to take a look at what feedback have we gotten from the residents over the past several years, whether it's through the survey or whether it's through other communication channels where residents have engaged with us. We want to build upon what we're doing well. We want to improve the things that we're not doing so well. And then look at this as we build the strategic plan for where we direct our resources. What are the residents telling us their priorities are? What are we doing well? What are we not doing so well? You know, the other thing that we did with the survey that we completed back in 2018 is our community partners used it. We also used the survey data when we've been applying for grants. For instance, back in 2018, one of the survey results was the large number of people who were likely to use alternative transportation, whether that was bike, walking, kayaking, other uses. We used that when we applied to the Ralph Wilson Foundation for the handicap accessible kayak launch that we later received the $50,000 grant to install that kayak launch. So the data can be used for many purposes, like applying for grants, as well as for our community partners when they're developing their strategic plan, thinking about nonprofits. I know MCOP has been very interested in this information and data in the past. And so, again, we would look to repeat this in another 3 years to see, have we moved the needle? Where are residents feeling in 3 years? Using the data as a tool to track and monitor civic engagement and civic participation and citizen feedback. So with that, I know it was a lot of information we threw at you, a lot of different results, but by all means, we've given you the information. You've got some time to read it over, as Florence said, when you're laying in bed, curious about what the residents are thinking, and by all means, contact us with any questions.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, thank you.
follow
Mark.
up, Florence?
I just want to follow up with the book that you have that I created for you guys. If you don't mind opening that up, I'll go through the tabs. Tab number 1 is a copy of the full report. It's actually 99 pages, but this was copied front and back. So this has all the technical appendices and everything else you want to know about the report. Very lot of information, so you may understand it. If you have any questions, please let me know. If I cannot answer the question, I will get with Polko and get a response for you. Tab number 2 is the actual survey itself. This is a survey that people actually completed either online or mailed it back in to the survey company, Polko. Tab number 3 is a summary of the full report, a narrative, and also information about the selected survey recipients, conducting the survey, and survey validity. If you want more information about that, there's a link you can click on. You have to put it into your browser, of course, and find more information about that. Number 4 is the summary of the customer questions, the custom questions. The strategic planning, the interaction with the city, special events, and then residential development. So you can see all the aspects of those 4 questions that residents were asked. And then also, tab number 5, I think was very important. This is a summary of the trends comparison for all the questions 2018 and 2023. You will not see a comparison of the custom questions. These are just the standard questions in the survey, the comparison from 2018 to 2023. You will not see that. And then tab number 6 is the geographic comparison that I mentioned, the full report for that. And number 7 is the demographic subgroups, the full report for that. So this is your binder. Please keep it as your Bible for your survey results for your residents. And I think having that precinct information is very important. So with that said, I'd like to thank you. And any questions, as I mentioned, please let me know. If you need additional copies, we can get those for you. Okay.
Thank you, Florence. There's a lot of data here. I'm sure that time for the council go through it, and either having the city manager come back, maybe with a follow-up session, or opportunities to have direct contacts. Any brief thoughts or questions at
Is
this
there any
point?
questions?
Yeah, I think that's part of what we should be, and of course, budget falls behind that as well. Andrew?
Did you want to go over questions now, or it sounds like we almost might have a separate meeting to decompress after we've had a chance to review some of the data?
Right, there's a lot of data here. Just looking at it, I've already got questions. When you talk about the percent comparison, then I want to take that in comparison to the amount of people that either online or responded. You could have a large percent and a low response rate, or a high response rate and a low percent. And how do you balance that between the overall of the community? So, so I haven't had time to get into that. That's one of my first thoughts.
I got half a page of notes, but if there's going to be a separate meeting, let's not get into it now. And
Yeah, because I think we have, I probably could have similar, and if we do that, then we're probably not going to get to our other item on the work session.
that was my fear as well.
Yeah, so I think maybe it gives me time to think about it and maybe write some collective questions rather than just free thinking that I'm doing right now, because I think of a couple of things that didn't seem to be of interest, but then later had good response. To me, it's how do I balance all that in the thought process rather than just one static slide that says 5 up or 5 down and on that. So I think that's where the detail comes in, at least for me. And I'm looking at the council. I see they're looking at the pages as we speak here because it's a lot of good information.
Well, if I could say, you may find that information, your answer, in the full report. You may or may not. But if you don't find it, I'll be glad to get back with Polko and ask those questions about how the extra structure of the data was formed.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that looking at city manager, that we have an opportunity at a future meeting just to kind of come back and with specific questions. I think would be beneficial than just trying to go onward, because Councilman Feller has some questions, and that may add 3 more to mine that I hadn't thought of too. That be in comparison or not the same. So I think of it that way. I don't think we can ask all the questions we'd want to ask this evening. But there's a lot of data. Thank you.
And I just want to say, I think too, that because the companies merged in 2019, so even though it's basically the same survey document, but some of the information may be slightly different just because they changed those livability factors. So that may have something to do with it. I'm not sure. But like I said, if you want more research questions, how they compiled the data, please let me know, and I'll be glad to get back. The survey is valid, and they went through, they're well-known in their space, but you're probably asking yourself, well, if the percentage dropped from, was it 24 to 15, how can that be valid? But it is valid. If you want more information about the validity, there is a website. There's a link to the website. We can actually research that for you as well.
And I think part of what counts maybe some of our responsibility or obligations are is as we go through there, not just come back with asking questions of where do we have the conversation in relation to our upcoming meetings, whether it be goals and objectives, budget, planning, resources of personnel, and how we adjust that. We've done that every couple of years. Of positions that we had in the past that may not are transition to things that to meet a different service. I mean, look at the change in our departments in the last 2 years that the council has put forward based off of some of the community desires and needs. So,
Well, I have to go back to the customer service because that worked.
yeah,
Mark, you were involved with that. We spent 2 months in 2018 training the city employees, and you see a 12% increase. And I run into employees all the time, and they mention give them the pickle and different things about the customer service and the customer experience. So you can really be proud of that because taking that time and investing in that training, that customer service and customer experience training, and even with the building department as well, that has worked. And that's a direct result of that survey.
so I think it is going to be important for us as we think forward. We have a trails committee now, bike pedestrian trails. We didn't have that before this, and that was known from previous survey. It still seems to be important from what I'm reading here, but things are being implemented, and the street and roads or infrastructure is always being asked about. But because we thought that through and went to the residents and they approved the street millage, but what was included in that was non-motorized as well. So trying to recover both. So I think not only reflecting forward, I think we ought to think about some things that were implemented in the last couple of years, and did they address some of what's here, and maybe not to the full capacity yet because of timing, but
Yeah.
and instead of just changing every 2 years, you can't do that either. But how do you continue on the things? I think that was one of the things that was in the notes there. What do you strengthen what you need and improve what you other need. So to me, that's kind of the conversation I think we should have as collectively, rather than trying to answer all my questions or another councilperson questions yet tonight. So we'll have to get with the city manager to see what we can do next. Andrew?
Yeah. For this evening, we obviously have the books here with us. Is the slide deck going to be distributed as well? The Tableau link leads to the source data, is my understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of to dig
Because
into.
I had methodological questions. And did Polko was in charge of the methodology then?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Well,
have methodological
the company has
questions.
combined, so it's two companies, now one, called Polko. So as a matter of fact, the lead person in 2018 is still with them. So, I'm there's 1,000% confident that they are first class.
I will send along my questions because they are certainly there. And then finally, if we're planning on discussing this at the goals and objectives session, prior to forming an action plan on what to do for the upcoming term, I think that Councilman-elect Hayter should be given this so that he can come prepared for that discussion as well.
My note right here before Florence continued. I asked her, said she had copies.
I'll get out of the
Make
way
sure
then.
we get a copy to Councilman-elect Hayter, who's here, and if he had one here tonight, we can give it to him. If not, we can get it to him here.
Yeah, we'll get it to
I think he's going to be here this week on another follow-up orientation session, so we'll make sure we have one for him. Yep, on my notes too.
And I have to thank Pat too. She helped collate all these different books, so.
Thanks, always a big shout out for Pat Weaver. She does great work. So
She does.
thanks, Florence. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the presentation, and it's actually good for other conversation to come. Thanks. City Manager Robinson?
Next item for our work session tonight is refuge collection procedures and discussion of our possible changes. I think you'll all remember that in July, we implemented and began our new service with our new service providers. We with Stevens Disposal, and there are a lot of different policy changes that the council and the administration at the time had made. And sometimes those things, you don't know how they're all going to work out because there were a lot of changes until they're actually rolled out and you are able to gather the response from your citizens and what the concerns are, et cetera. And what we did immediately when it began, of course, it's a major adjustment, and I do credit our communications department with getting the information out to the public in every media form that was possible and available. And I think that the actual getting people to start to understand that it's no longer the bag usage and start using the carts, I think that went incredibly well. I think our residents got it right away. I think there was skepticism at first about the size of the bin, blah, blah, blah. Were they able to roll it down the drive, et cetera? And was one bin going to be enough? All those kind of questions. Well, as we were rolling it out, of course, the staff here received phone calls after phone calls after phone calls from our residents. And all of their phone calls, we cataloged the issues so that we could kind of work together and kind of figure out what are the main issues that are going on. And then we formed with department heads along, it actually included some of our people who are taking the call, some of our staff members who are the call answerers, and we put together a work group. Well, with this work group, we kind of put out with everybody and told the residents that were calling, we are going to do this because we don't want to make change after change after change in our policy, because then all it does is it confuses the public more, and then people don't understand what all is happening. So after we've been doing this now since July, so we're at about 5 months, approaching the 6-month mark. And we think with our working group, we've sat down several times and we've put it together, and Director Lewis helped collate the things that we had issues with. And there were several different things that were overarching common problems that you were receiving as council members, because I spoke to many of you on the issues as they came up, as well as the calls and everything that came in. The first thing that was one of the big issues was providing a second refuse cart free for all residential units. Originally, we were only doing that for single-family residences. So the other residences, any multifamily residences, would have to purchase a second cart if they wanted it. And we looked at that as it was kind of a two-tiered system. And we felt that it would be important and helps our overarching plan. So our first recommendation is for us to, for every parcel, every residential unit parcel that we have in the city, that we will provide a second one for free upon their request. And it's a request only. And just so you know, we have basically 3 major topics I want to cover today. All of them, it was important to me that it remains cost neutral. That means it's not going to cost the city or our residents any more to implement these changes than we're currently already paying within our contract with Stevens. So that is the first one. The second one was allowing recycling carts upon request only from multifamily residential units. Some of the calls we received, because in the initial plan, we took the recycling carts away from multi-family units, traditionally thinking that we were aligning them as a commercial business, thinking, well, you're running a business. If you're going to recycle as a business owner, you should be providing the ability for them to recycle. Well, what we found is a lot of the residential business owners were either passing this on to their residents, to their tenants for any extra services or any extra carts that they were going to have, or they were at an inflated rate to some. And we just felt as a collective group that if people want to recycle in this city, and we take pride in our recycling program, they should have that option, whether they happen to be an individual that rents or an individual that is purchasing or owning their home. They should have the ability to recycle if they want. Now, we do have the caveat that for those residents, if they want a recycle bin, they have to call and actually request it, which also gives us the capacity to be able to educate as well. Because with the recycling carts, a big concern is contamination rate. People, and that's kind of fed into why we're providing the second cart for free, because we're fearful that people will say, oh gosh, if we just deliver them a recycle cart, they'll say, oh, we just got another cart, it's got a different color lid, it might be a different color cart, and we're just going to use it as garbage too. And if that happens, that could jeopardize our entire recycling program and cause extremely high penalty costs to the city because the recycling stuff is contaminated. So that is the second change. And then the third one, which was probably the one we received the most and is still the one that we have continuing issues with, is bulk collection. It's really hard to transition from a city when we used to say, it's your garbage day, put anything and everything out you want, the city's going to pick it up, to all of a sudden, the world of that kind of free service is pretty much eliminated across the board in most communities, and I would say almost all communities. So we did put a policy in place that, listen, every resident was eligible for bulk service. Every single family resident was eligible for bulk service. And it was on a single day, it was on a Friday, where you can put out 2 bulk items, and then you contact the city and you let them know that you're putting out 2 items. We generate a list, we give it to Stevens, and on Friday they go and they pick up those bulk items. All within our contract. Well, what we have found is, okay, if we can't do that for our multifamily units too, then what's happening, we're creating, we did identify problems where we would have where somebody gets evicted, next thing you know, everything they own is between the sidewalk and the road, and it's going to sit there a week until somebody has to go and clean that up, or we incur special charges by calling the service, or our DPS people are having to clean all this up. Well, we looked at it as everybody ought to have the opportunity to put out bulk, but everybody is, by parcel, everybody has the same rules. It's on a Friday. You can put out per parcel, whether it's multifamily or whatever, but per parcel you can put out 2 items. And you put out those 2 items, you call the city, they get on the list, and Stevens will pick up those bulk items. And what that does is what we were seeing is we were problems if there had no ability to get rid of bulk items. We were finding it in fields, at dead-end streets, in areas where people are just getting rid of it, or they're taking it and putting it in other people's bulk stuff in front of their yard, or there was all sorts of issues that we were running into with the bulk service. And I think that as we do this, we are also going to look at putting the ability to get on the list, not just simply by having to call and talk to our staffers at the desk. We're also looking at putting something on our website where somebody can call up or register right online, or also on our My Monroe app. The people that have those on their phone can very quickly put it in, hey, listen, this is the thing, and put the rules out. So we think that these are reasonable changes for the reasons that our residents have brought to us, and some of you have brought to me these same concerns. And we think that this is a just and even way to where we're treating all residents, whether they rent a home or they own a home in the city, they have the ability to have the same services. They have the ability for recycling. They'll have the ability for bulk service, but it has to follow those rules just like everybody else. And I think with the the way that we have done this is another opportunity for education, because when somebody wants a second container, they call, they get in, they have that chance for the spiel from the individuals here to be educated on, okay, this is, you have now have two, in which we, believe it or not, we thought we were going to get inundated with people wanting the second cart. It has not been as vast as what I thought it was going to be at the very beginning, because you can fit a lot of rubbish in that 96-gallon cart. So we've had some, but not a ton. But by providing, upon request, a second one to everyone at the same cost, it's not costing us anything, it's not costing them anything. And then that allows them ample areas to discard their trash. But then if they want to also recycle, they will have then the ability to call and get a recycling bin for their parcel, for their residents, and that'll be by request only. There are some people who don't want to recycle. There are some people that really do, and by the change that we made, we eliminated their ability to be able to recycle without them having to drive somewhere else to go recycle it, whether it's at the county or at a different bulk collection type service or recycling service. So that's kind of where we're at about our possible changes. Any of the true detail, myself and Director Lewis are more than happy to answer any questions you may have in regarding this. But we vetted this. We've talked to residents, we've talked to our staff, and we made this decision of these policies as this recommendation to you of the change of our policies. Not in a vacuum. It wasn't my decision. It wasn't one individual's. It was a collective body of work. And as we took the information, we took the advice of everybody who has to touch through here, to include the DPS people, the blight people who tag the people when they're not doing it correctly. And we're starting to gain compliance, because things like this take a period of time for our residents to get adjusted to. I know the bulk thing is something you have to think. It used to be you could put it out on the same date that you had your stuff. Well, it's a different kind of program now. And but we're still getting a handful every week that they put it out on their garbage day on Monday, and it sits there until, Friday. So we're working on those. Our blight inspectors are out there doing it. If it's there too long, our DPS workers go out and they pick it up. And hopefully this will curb itself. So we're happy to answer any questions, or if you see any changes you want to these policies, let us know. And then we'll bring it back to you at the next meeting to have you vote on it to make those changes official.
Thank you. Questions from council members? Andrew?
Yeah, first of all, let me address the residential changes that you put forward. I think I'm broadly in support of all the proposed changes that were made. I don't see any changes to commercial usage. I know that we've had discussions in the past regarding our dumpster setup, especially for the downtown and some of our other denser neighborhoods, like Towns on Front. I was wondering if there was any planned situation change for any of them. I know I have been contacted by several downtown businesses. I'm sure it's the same for many of my colleagues, regarding that, as well as the recycling situation for some of those entities that had a recycling bin during the last contract, but then lost it for this one. And of course, we were in a position where, hey, we know that we're going to change it. We're not going to change it right now. Let's have that discussion when we have that discussion. Now we're having that discussion. I'm wondering if there's a plan to return those recycling bins, or what that policy is, or how we plan on moving forward in that direction.
Well, I think as we go forward, I think that there has been a distinction between commercial businesses and residential businesses. And I think there was purposes that the prior administration here and this council wanted to eliminate the bins in the downtown area, especially. And a commercial business, if it's a commercial business, there are some commercial businesses that have zero recycling. There are other commercial businesses that have recycling. Well, that's a cost of doing your commercial business. It's not where you live. It's not affecting the residents where you're at. That is part of your commercial business. I think the dumpsters have, at first, yes, we had a lot of questions. There were a lot of, but I don't think we don't receive many commercial questions or complaints. And I think that the dumpsters have worked out rather well, at least from the complaint basis that we have people coming and calling us. Is that right, Director Lewis?
I know I continue to receive complaints, but I know that there's a danger of that being anecdotal when it's from one guy,
Sure. Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services. And that's the downtown thing has quieted down a bit. The first couple of months were pretty rough because it was training people to use those dumpsters. But that was one of the challenges with going to the common dumpster model, is that having a recycling dumpster in a common area is very, very difficult to police and would add significantly to our contamination percentage. The challenge we have with rolling out the carts to the downtown businesses is how we made this cost neutral. And again, this was a stated goal of council to remove those bags from the street downtown. I know that was something that was important to many people for a community appearance kind of thing. But what we did to facilitate the dumpsters is we're paying Stevens now on a per pole basis based on those dumpsters instead of the $165 per unit, which we're paying on the residential side. If we go back to offering recycling to those businesses, there's going to be an additional cost to the contract because we're already accounting for that cost in the dumpster. And it was about neutral. It was like $10,500 to eliminate the number of units that we would have picked up, and it cost us $10,800 or something like that. So it was pretty much neutral across the board. But right now, we'd then be implementing a service to certain businesses, which would then result in that additional $165 per year cost. If that's something the council feels strongly enough about, we can look at that, but I would highly recommend against common recycling dumpsters like we have the common trash dumpsters, because it's almost impossible to police. I answered a couple more questions I don't think you asked, but it was kind of important for the broader context of the discussion.
I'm inclined to agree with your final part, as I think that mostly from a volumetric perspective, it's going to be unnecessary. But I think the individual bins there is still a desire for, because I've walked into some businesses and there's a pile of cardboard boxes in the corner, and they said, "Oh, I'll take them home at the end of the day and stick them in my own bin because I like to recycle and I'm going to do that." But there's nowhere for them to put them at their establishment.
Yeah. So. Understood, and that may be one of those little things. Again, we focused kind of on the big three, if you will, were the ones that are presented tonight, but that was one of those things that we couldn't quite make everyone's clock chime together on that, but I think I don't know, Mr. Robinson, did you have any other thoughts on that? But that was, I think, kind of where we left it on the commercial recycling. If we weren't already paying for that unit of service, it would be incurring an additional cost, and so I think we elected not to pursue that.
Well, and that's why when I set out to do this, I wanted to make the changes based on practicality and the desires and the needs of our residents. But I also wanted it to be cost neutral. I didn't want to add costs to that contract onto us or the residents by increasing our contract costs with Stevens. I wanted to keep it cost neutral. And being that the calls and the claims from the business, seems like the common dumpsters have been working okay. I haven't had anybody call my office and mad that they got to take their garbage to the common dumpsters where they're placed that's in the downtown business area. And if you think about any of the other businesses that aren't in our downtown, they already have a dumpster service that they pay for out of their own, business expenses. And where do you draw that line? I mean, where do you draw that line? And I thought definitively when I took over here and this was there, that line was drawn on any kind of business, whether it was in a residential business or it was a commercial business. And that's where we got into the problem where residential businesses, people who are landlords, we were basically penalizing the tenants without having the ability to the full services that everybody else that is a resident of a single-family home has to use, even though if you drive by the house, you don't know if it's a rental home or you don't know if it's a single-family residence. It just happens to be the way somebody happens to be paying for it. And I didn't think that that was fair, and I think our group, when we were working on it, didn't think that that was fair either. So I think the next step to draw that line between what is a business and what is not a business, I think when you say a commercial business entity, I think that that's where we have decided to draw that line and propose to you. Now, if council is open and wishes to have the bins back downtown and those available for people, we just, you need to know it is gonna be an added cost to the city to provide that service. And then if you want bins in the downtown, the businesses in the downtown want bins, then what do we tell the businesses that are not in our downtown that are currently already in our operating expenses paying for dumpsters and recycle dumpsters? Do we then have to offer it to them, which would be even more costs? So I guess it's a council decision on what level of service do you want to provide to our commercial businesses? And that's kind of how I feel. I mean, it's up to you in what the direction that you want. We'll go whichever direction you choose, but this is the rationale of why we chose the way that we have chosen with the recommendation on these three items. If you'd like further changes, then we certainly can explore those and bring back what the cost would be. But I think it'd be very difficult to determine, because how do you offer it to simply businesses in our downtown area and not allow it to every other business that's in our city to have the carts?
Brian?
Yeah, obviously I own a business downtown, and I can answer some of those questions for you, but from a business perspective, we're taxpayers too, so we have to don't take that lightly. I want to make that clear. And also, the other thing is that from a business perspective, when we're dumping into the dumpsters now, it can be pretty difficult to get into that dumpster, especially if you have a heavy bag, you're trying to pick it up, throw it into that dumpster. Picture somebody like Mary Gail Benito trying to pick the bag up and throw it into a dumpster. It's not exactly easy. I know we have some of the side opening dumpsters in the other available parking lot, and those I've heard have been with great success. But the ones where I'm at, we don't have that, and the availability, as my understanding is, it's not there for us to be able to use. So that's why we offered, I think, carts to some of the businesses on the north side of Front Street, simply because it was very difficult to use those dumpsters that were across the street. So that's one of my points I want to make as far as that goes. So we got, like I said, we just got to be careful how we address this. Obviously, everybody's paying taxes in some fashion or form, and they have to get some kind of use out of that tax. If we're paying for trash, we should be allowed to utilize it some way, fashion, or form. The other thing I wanted to know is, do you want the businesses downtown to have the bins, the carts, or do you want them not to have the carts? If we don't want them to have the carts, that's fine. We just have to find a way to make it easy for them, one way or another. Put it in a dumpster,
Well,
side
my,
dumpster.
It's not whether I want them to have carts or not want to have carts. My impression is what I was told is that the council did not want to have those carts lining our downtown on trash day. And that's why they went to the common dumpster.
I believe that's largely correct. I mean, and the other part of it too is if we have a fractured situation downtown, we're going to be double paying for some of that. I think that was I know we offered the carts anybody on the north side of Front Street, and the logic behind that was we're forcing people to cross a major street to go down an alley to put their trash in a dumpster. We've adjusted the dumpster collection frequency based on the volume you get, but I think everyone probably has an innate sense that it's sort of like the if you build it, they will come kind of discussion here. If you have common dumpsters in the alley, they will find a way to be filled most of the time, and the ones closest to Front Street are a good example of that. They're the most convenient ones for the most number of residents. We haven't found a lot of people on the north side of Front Street need to do anything different. So I don't think we've actually rolled out any carts to those people, because I think they just said, yeah, this is great. I can take it to the dumpster any day of the week. But the other challenge that we have with the carts in general is, what do you do with the upstairs apartments? And that's really was one of the driving factors behind why when we switched from bags to carts, it made it highly difficult to accommodate the upstairs apartments. And what we didn't want was carts sitting out all the time outside of the building. And I think that was another component of it as well. If you start getting into giving people the choice of, do you want a cart or do you want to use the dumpster, the problem is going to be we're still going to end up paying for those dumpsters at least a certain amount of frequency. Even if we cut back the number of times we collect them from 3 to 2 times a week, if you get a bunch of people that have the carts, maybe the first floor businesses will roll them and put them inside the door and put them out, you're going to end up with a very fractured system, and we're still going to end up with both carts and dumpsters. And my suspicion is you're probably going to have other people that are going to make use of those dumpsters and fill them up more frequently. So it was multifaceted. We had tried this on the west side first because the riverfront parking lot had a lot of available space, and it seemed to go fairly well. It's not perfect. And again, there's sometimes when Councilwoman Steelgrave mentioned, if I want to get rid of a mattress, what do I do? And bulk for downtown businesses is one of those things that's we're going to have to kind of catch as catch can. But this is where we are. So that's the rationale behind not doing carts for the most part.
Yeah, like I said, I don't have any problem with not doing the carts downtown, but make it convenient for the business owners to at least get rid of their trash. And in several instances, I've seen the dumpsters completely full, and there's no place to put the trash at all. So that can be a little bit alarming for a business owner as well. You got full dumpster, nowhere to go with the trash. That's a problem. So those are the little things we have to those are the hiccups we have to basically get through, as well as like you just mentioned, the bulk pickup as well. Because I know my business alone, we have pallets that come in frequently. I try to get rid of them, but the people that bring them in, but a lot of times they'll leave them and not take them. So that's another issue as well. So just those are the little things I'd like to kind of navigate through to figure out. I don't want to put any more burden on the city, obviously, but I'd also want to make sure that we're taking care of all the businesses downtown so that they feel like they are a part of the city. That's the main thing.
Questions? Andrew?
We have no recycling dumpsters in the downtown that the city provides now.
No.
We have no recycling carts in the downtown that the city
Well,
provides now.
Let me correct that. We have a couple of recycling bins on the west side parking lot that we have those inside of the enclosures. I hesitate to say that because now all of a sudden everybody will find their way down to those, but there are a couple of the regular rollout bins that are next to one of the dumpsters on the west side parking lot. That was a carryover from 3 years ago when we started this. That would be the option that you could try, but again, I think we find those are frequently filled with garbage. They're not really used for recycling. People try, but I think we most of the time just end up dumping those as trash.
Is that a symptom of what Councilman Lamore was just explaining?
The problem you have with everything is, hey,
And
trash
if there's
can.
a dumpster there and I can throw something in it, maybe someone who shouldn't be throwing something in it is throwing something. I get the dilemma.
We even saw our haulers have even shown us pictures from college campuses where they have recycling dumpsters and where you'd think they would be cognizant of this, and it was a mishmash of stuff. And that is the problem with unpoliced commonality is you're going to end up discarding those as trash.
And so as a premise, even if we determine that the trash dumpsters in the downtown are sufficient, and maybe that's a point that needs to be discussed further, but let's start with that premise. There is no universal recycling offering by the city in the downtown at this time. Would that be a correct statement?
That's a correct statement.
Okay, thank you.
So we only have about 7 minutes. We'll have to get ready for the meeting. I have several questions. I'm not going to get them all in this time frame. I have questions like, I heard different things like parcels, and I heard property units, and I need to understand what each of those are. Because when you talk about parcels, to me, a parcel is one piece of property. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about units and offering two trash bins to each resident is what I heard, or each parcel. Let me finish. Then I heard that there was going to be residential units. It is a business. It's just a different kind of business. So I think we have to take that into consideration when we have multiple units that are 3 and 4 units. So then are we giving trash units to each of the 4 units, let's say, or 3 units in on a parcel? Is that the proposal, or is it going to be that they can, from the parcel, they can ask for a second unit?
The parcel of land, whether it contains 1 unit, 2, 3, 4, up to 8, I think we have, the parcel is one legal property. And right now, we were treating single-family parcels as different from multiple family parcels in that if you were on a duplex or triplex or up, you were considered a commercial rental, and you were only entitled to 1 cart for free, and then
So
you're
what's
billed.
proposed now? If
The
it's
second cart
if it's a
would
duplex,
the duplex would be the second cart for the parcel would be free. So
triplex or quad?
what's that?
If it's a triplex or quad,
It's still only, and the reason we settled on 2 was because
is it 2 or 4?
it's 2.
Okay, that's
No
all I
more
need-
than
that's-
2
that's all I
for
need to
any
know.
piece of land.
So that answers that part of it. You know, the bulk pickup, and we can also give site problems and think circumstances, because there are people that have a business through a rental properties. And I'm not opposed to that. I think it's a legitimate business, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of time. But we have units that are in our community, but they own units in the out county, and they bring the trash in because they don't have to pay for it then in the township. So they bring it and stack it out in front. Bulk was one of the particular problems. Oddly enough, it's the bag collection when there's a duplex, and next thing you know, there's 60 bags out front with leaves or something, and it can't be from that property. So to me, I only note that as you talk about enforcement and actions that we need to take. So I think the trade-off is, when you talk about, recycling downtown versus, multiple units elsewhere. What I heard is we're going to not charge for this, but we're going to have to charge for that. So it still have some questions with it. I probably have more questions. I want to ask them all tonight
Well,
because we're not going to get it decided tonight, I don't believe.
Yeah, if I may, the main reason we settled on the 2 per parcel was because we had previously made a commitment that the second cart would be free for single-family residential. And so what we're trying to do is put the multiples on the same. That was decided way back in May.
Right. So
we're putting every parcel of land on the same footing. That was the main reason we settled on 2 free for every parcel. And that will accommodate 3/4 of all the multiple families because 3/4 of them are duplexes. That's been our biggest concern is we're hearing one tenant got the cart and the other one was left high and dry and the landlord didn't
that's the
take care of it.
business of a rental property. The owner has the duplex. But
Right.
I'm comfortable knowing that we have to offer additional. My concern is if we're going to start auctioning each unit, you already answered it and said it's not the case. The recycling, I think that as I read through this, the recycling of making sure that if a person has an interest and wants to recycle, we should provide them with a recycle bin so they can join in with the recycling, and hope that way encourage others to do the same. But just to give them out, that's not part of this proposal, because some people are not good recyclers and they just use it for trash. So I think if somebody's asking for a recycle bin, tells me they have a sincere interest that they want to recycle in a correct fashion. So I don't have a problem with that item as well. I think I understand the second cart a little bit better. Kelly and then Brian.
So with the multi-units, if I'm in a triplex and we get the second cart, can I, as the third resident, purchase another
We
cart?
still have it set up that it's supposed to be the landlord that arranges for the purchase.
Well, can I have the landlord purchase a third cart?
Yes.
Or if there's 8 units and all of us want our own cart and we pay for it, or through the landlord, we can have 8 carts?
Yes, and a few landlords have already done that. They've committed to pay. We have not billed yet because we anticipate some of this might be coming, but yes, you can still, now there's a practical upper limit. I'm not going to roll out 16 carts to a 5-plex or something, but yes, more or less it's basically $120 per additional cart that the landlord would be responsible, since they're the ones that would have the lien on their property.
Because that's where most of the complaints I receive personally, multifamily units and not enough. And I don't know if I just generate a lot of trash. I have a lot of grandchildren. So, I mean, that 96-gallon cart, like this Thursday, I couldn't even close it all the way just because, we had the holiday festivities and stuff. So I like the idea of being able to have the second cart. Also, with the bulk pickup, I was wondering, because the city is looking a little messy since we moved over to Stevens, And that's why I didn't even realize that you can only put bulk out on a certain day. So I'm happy that I learned that and I can pass that information on
The
now.
2 items, which is the other thing, which was a
You know,
change.
where was I at when we were deciding all this? Because I just think it's a bad idea. But anyway, if you notice, maybe you have walking through the city neighborhoods or whatever, people are still putting the bulk out there as we had on the old contract. I don't know how much longer it's gonna take.
I thought it would have settled by now.
No,
but
I'm seeing
we're
it
still
all the
seeing
time.
it.
Mattresses, furniture, things just laying out there for the whole week. So, um, I mean, we're in the contract now, but I'm glad to know that it's only on Fridays.
Yep.
And you have to call ahead.
Call ahead, but we're working on a web form through our Laserfish forms. It'll route right into our department, and we can add them on the list. It's limited to 2 items per week, and that will not change. And with the multifamily, it will also be 2 items, again, per parcel, not per unit. So if it's a triplex, you don't get 6 items. But it's 2 items a week, so people just have to do a little bit of staging about when they want to dispose of bulk. And that's being done so that we don't get the importation of bulk items from outside areas. If you have unlimited bulk, you're going to get bulk from the townships. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
Well,
Right.
I mean,
Oh, go ahead, Kelly, because I'm just watching the time. Go ahead.
okay, yeah, see. Anyway, with the in the past with the bulk, so we talked about providing bulk because we want to give our residents an opportunity to clean out garages, attics, and then we had a few instances of evictions, which I think if we do that, we should just try to focus on the individual who did that and not penalize the whole city. But in the past, the city used to provide uh, dumpsters on certain days, and we would have like community bulk days. So maybe that's something we could consider. I don't know what would be the cost on that or anything, but we used to do it kind of like in the springtime. Maybe you recall, Patrick?
Yeah, it's not been consistent, but we're happy to get pricing and look at any options the council wants to pursue.
Thought.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one real quick thing. How do we encourage our residents to put their trash and recycle bins at the curb, not in the street?
How do we encourage it? We've done our best to try to spread the word when we talk to people, but it's a varying problem depending on what street you're on. Carts in Elm Avenue are a problem. Carts in a parking lane on a residential street are less of an issue. Some terraces are pretty steep. I know there's a couple places on Macomb Street where they had to kind of dig into there to get a flat spot. It's another one of the challenges that come with carts. I don't know that we have the resources to go around policing it because it can be widespread in certain neighborhoods where it is largely innocuous. Things like this, hopefully people watching will see that, and we put it in our literature, but again, if people don't read it and they don't focus on it, or they don't view it as a big problem. I think there's many people that don't view it as a big problem, and frankly, in some neighborhoods, it's not a big problem. On a dead-end street, cart in the road is...
Well, I don't think it's a huge problem on the major streets. I think it's a problem on the side streets more than
Yeah.
anything else, because it can clog up the road a little bit more. That's major, the big major issue I can at least think of. And the other thing I'm thinking is that if we maybe add a sticker like, instructions, do not put on street. I don't know. Just thinking out loud here.
Yeah, it's possible. We've got a lot of people doing it, that's for sure.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Well, I don't think we're going to get resolution this evening, Mr. Robinson, but it starts the conversation. Andrew?
I can be very brief. Patrick, I think you might have touched on it already, the disparity between the people who before have reserved their $120 cart and now we're making it free. You've said we haven't billed for anything yet.
We have not billed for any carts. We anticipated there may be some movement, so they had to sign a form committing to pay for it, but they haven't paid for it. This will eliminate...
So we're not going to be left with any hurt feelings at the end of the day of people who purchased the carts, but now it's free.
No, I don't believe
Thank you
so.
for clearing
And
that
many
up.
of those will just simply go away because most of the ones we have are duplexes that have purchased a second cart. So Yep.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Ms. Robinson, I know we're at the end of time, so is there any last comments that you have?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have about 1 minute, and we take a, before we start the city council meeting, I think we'll just, if there's questions that come forward, we can bring those at the start of the meeting. So at this time, I'm going to close the work session.
But I, you know, out, you go out to the counter.
You know, one thing I have noticed.
One minute.
Call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder,
Present.
Whitman,
Excused.
Stilgrave. Here.
Here.
Jermaine. Here. Lamore. Mayor Clark.
As we all please rise for the invocation, remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
As we come together this evening, help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer, and nurture the bonds of community. Remind us that all that we do here this evening and all that we accomplish is for the welfare of and in service to the citizens of Monroe.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, first item, please.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of the regular agenda.
Thank you. City Manager Robinson, any adjustments to the regular agenda?
The administration has no adjustments to the agenda.
Any other conversation from council on the agenda? Seeing none, a motion would be in order.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine. Approve the regular agenda. Clerk, please call the roll.
Felder?
Yes.
Stilgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments to vendors, the amount should read $1,008,018.10, 1008018.10.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, are there any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? And so I see some new faces here this evening. So what that means is a consent agenda usually gets voted on with one motion by council and a second, and we vote those in collectively. There are items that probably have had conversation in the past or fall within the criteria to fit on a consent agenda. But those that are present here this evening can make a request to have an item that's on the consent agenda to have pulled for a discussion. Maybe you want more information or you want to have a question about another item. For instance, I'll just pick an item that's on here. We're purchasing front-mounted snow plows for the pickup trucks. Maybe you have an interest in that. So I use this as examples for when people come so they understand that a consent agenda, well, how do they pass that all with all the items that are on here? So the opportunity is there. I see that our finance director just came up to
Yes, he gave me a big correction, so.
there's a correction. It
Yes.
appears under the AP preliminary report.
Yes.
Okay, so
yes.
before we move, and we have a motion, we don't have a motion yet, so we're still seeing if there's any items to pull. I don't see any requests. So before we go for a motion on the consent agenda, Clerk Lavoy.
So apparently I pulled the wrong number, but it should read $2,284,431.49, 2284431.49. You never want to see the finance director coming at you at a meeting, so.
Yeah, as I was talking, not that I was trying to talk slower, but he was getting there quickly, so
Yeah.
I knew that there must be something he saw that was going to help us.
That
So
was it, but no other changes.
So it's timely then, that it was done before we took our motion. So I see no request to have the consent agenda, any items pulled. Councilman Felder?
Yes. Can I improve the $1 million
Yeah,
appropriation
no,
instead?
we're looking for the full amount.
I'll
please.
make a motion to approve all items on the consent agenda, that they be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted.
Second.
So motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder? Yes. Stilgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Jermaine? Yes. Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item on the agenda is under presentations, communications, and public hearings. Item 4385, proposed public art ordinance, public hearing to receive and review comments. And we have not received any comments in the clerk treasurer's office.
Thank you. Well, this is for a public hearing. So at this time, when we have a public hearing, it means it's an item that was discussed previously. And it requires a second review, a second opportunity for the public to, since our last meeting, to learn about it. And at this time, there's a public hearing. So I guess I'll move forward. Clerks, anything further?
I have nothing further.
So at this time, I'll open the public hearing on item 4385, proposed public ordinance number 23-004, a public hearing regarding public art ordinance. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding this proposed ordinance? Any comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and comes back to council. If there's any comments from council, or if not, clerk.
So the next item would be under council action, item 4363, final reading of ordinance 23-004, installed public art.
So this is under council action. So is there any comments from council? No comments, a motion would be in order.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to place ordinance 23-004 on the floor for its final reading.
So motion by Councilwoman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave, that item 4363, final reading of the ordinance number 23-004, installed public art. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder?
Yes.
Stilgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Ordinance 23-004, installed public art. An ordinance to establish guidelines and procedures for the safe display of temporary or permanent public installed art within the city of Monroe. The city of Monroe ordains.
Shall this ordinance pass?
Councilperson Felder? Stilgrave? Vining? Jermaine? Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Please.
The next item is item 4378, adoption of revised park rules.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, City Manager, any comments on the revised rules or since our last meetings?
I don't believe we have any comments, but if there's any questions that you have for Director Cochran, it was the Office of Economic Development that made the revisions to the rules with the help of our city attorney. And we're welcome to answer any questions you may have about some of the rules that may be in place. If you don't have any questions, we ask that you approve those park rules.
Any questions from council for administration or staff? As I was reading this today, I guess I'll just have one. It's not for a question or a change or any way to slow down this adoption of rules. It was interesting when I read about the recreational metal detectors. Of course, we know that here within our community that it's permitted in parks unless otherwise posted. But specifically, it is strictly prohibited in the area of Munson Park. So it made me think about the River Raisin National Battlefield Park, which is national park property, but there's also city property there. I think for many historic and archaeological reasons, we probably wouldn't permit recreational metal detecting there. However, it doesn't have to say this in the policy because you just keep listing then. You know, parks, it is allowable, but probably unless otherwise posted. So my only comment as we move forward, I'm certain that we'll be working with the National Park Service and our other partners that we see that signs are placed in that. It might, I think as we go into our Heritage Corridor area in the Hellenberg Park, which is also tied to that discussion. And then maybe as we get down to our trail plan through the Heritage Corridor Trail. So just thoughts for the future. So I just want to add those comments in this evening. So with that, if there's no other comments from council, Councilwoman Jermaine?
I'll make a motion, move to adopt the resolution to approve the updated park rules and regulations.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Jermaine, supported by Councilwoman Moore. Item 4378, the adoption of the revised park rules. Please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder?
Yes.
Stilgrave?
Yes.
Vining? Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Then please.
The next item is item 4377, consideration of sale of city-owned property, 634 Church Street.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, City Manager, comments on this item?
I would like to invite our Director of Economic Development, because there are some items that he wants to bring to your attention prior to taking action on this item.
Mr. Cochran.
Good evening again, Honorable Mayor, City Council. Mark Cochran, Director of Economic and Community Development. As council is aware, it's my department that manages all the surplus city-owned vacant property across the city. And from time to time, we do get requests from individuals or otherwise asking to purchase or acquire vacant city-owned property. Part of that process includes asking the interested party what they intend to do with the property. We do look at whether the lot in the existing zoning code is buildable and conforming, or whether it's non-conforming and non-buildable. Certainly, if it's non-buildable, we wouldn't want to sell it to be built on. Or convey it to be built on. If it is buildable, we do generally ask some questions. It is our obligation anytime we get a request to dispose of city property that's a decision that City Council is charged with making. And so we always let people know that if they want to make an offer, we can bring it to City Council. And so in this instance, we got a request from Mr. Darrell Horton to purchase 634 Church Street. He does own the properties on either side that he purchased from the County of Monroe. And he intends to build or place a single family owner occupied residency on the site for him and his family. The building is buildable. He would have to comply with all zoning regulations in order to build on the site. However, he did inform us in discussion that the property wouldn't be built on for approximately 2 to 3 years. With that, we do, generally have some concerns that if we convey the property now, it's going to sit in a vacant condition for the next 2 to 3 years. Certainly, if somebody doesn't want to build or develop the site and the site is still vacant by the time that they do, they can come back with a request at that time when they're interested. And we conveyed that and let him know. That was some of our advice and guidance that would be bringing to City Council. He does propose to purchase the property for $2,500. The true cash value on file in the assessor's office is $4,777. So he is proposing to purchase it for just a little less than half of what we have on file as the value. And so we're bringing this to City Council with the recommendation that if it is your desire to sell the property to Mr. Horton, that there would be a requirement in the purchase agreement that a permit for construction would be pulled within a period of 6 months to require it to be reactivated and built on as it was intended and conveyed to us. So bringing it to you for your discussion, advice, and counsel on what your desire would be to do with this offer.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Questions from council? I'll go down the line. Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. If he does not pull the permit within 6 months, would we refund him his money, or is that basically, okay,
Yeah, the city would buy it back for the purchase price.
perfect, thank you.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. What were the circumstances in the cost of our acquisition of this property?
I believe we got it through the county tax foreclosure.
Tax foreclosure?
Yeah,
So
given
the only cost to us then would be, did we pay the county for it, or did we just forego the taxes that were owed on it?
No, those come back to us. I would say the ongoing cost, though, is we're not receiving any tax revenue in the meantime, since
Certainly ongoing maintenance.
and we're required to maintain it
Yeah,
and,
of course.
and pay to contract that out.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Vining.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with Mr. Horton's request, but I just wanted, for clarity's sake, about a year ago, we put, I'll use the word moratorium, on moving with any sales of city property. Is this to say that hold is lifted from, and residents can continue to make these requests now?
Yeah, I think generally that's a practice. At the time, it was particularly in the Orchard East neighborhood while we were working on the Orchard East sub-area plan to look at what the needs of the neighborhood are. Obviously, it was certainly recognized that affordable and new housing and high-quality housing stock is identified as a need in the Orchard East neighborhood. So the property is zoned for single-family residential, so there's no zoning prohibitions or anything that would be need to change in order to meet that demand. And also because it is in the middle of an established residential neighborhood, I don't think it would be something we would want to consider rezoning it for commercial or any other use. But so it does meet the goals and objectives in the Orchard East sub-area plan implementation as well as the existing zoning code.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about there were 3 or 4 other residents who had made similar requests when we put that hold on. So is that to say they can now come back and make these requests?
Yeah, I think anytime we receive these requests, we'll bring them to city council. Certainly the request we would want to look at based on the master plan and the sub-area plan to make sure that it's achieving all the goals and objectives that you've adopted as part of the future master plan for whatever area of the city it may be, piece of property may be located in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? So I guess I'll follow up to Councilman Felder's, or I guess both councilmen's questions. So what we have proposed here is pull permits in 6 months. If the permits aren't done, it would return. If he pulls the permits, but there's nothing that's built, and then he's able to move on and let's say, and I believe Mr. Horton's sincere in what he's trying to do here. I think it's great for development for a home in the neighborhood and use of the property right in the center of a really, as you look at the location. But he decides not to then build, even though he has permits, and decides to sell the property. Will that be permitted, or would it still come back an opportunity for the city?
Likely what we would propose in the purchase agreement would be that the permits would have to be pulled within 6 months and construction begin within 6 months after that.
And
So,
if not, then it reverts.
yeah, correct.
Because obviously the value of the property and purchase it and then resell it, but in the end, it's really out of the management because it could sell to anybody. Then we could be back where we started with vacant property. So I think that is something that's not in his realm or consideration to do, but I just want to make sure that how we manage that contract. So thank you.
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilman Viney?
did I misunderstand? That he said it would take 2 or 3 years? Did you say to finish the project or start the project?
No, he said it would sit vacant for 2 to 3 years before he would start the project.
So a 6-month thing is after the.
No, 6 months would be, we don't want it to sit empty and in the same condition that it's in right now for another 3 years. Certainly if it's not developed in 2 to 3 years and he's ready to start and build a house on it, he can bring the agreement or the proposal back to city council at that time. But generally, we'd like to make sure that when city is giving up or selling or conveying property, that it is going to be reactivated for a positive use. And we generally having those timeframes in there with 6 months, we make sure that it's not going to sit there for umpteen years before something actually happens with it, when the city could make an effort to make sure that it's redeveloped and achieves the purposes that have been identified in some of our master plans. Certainly, if council has other desires, we can, that's why we're bringing it tonight.
I'm just asking for clarity because I thought, I heard something about he has 6 months, but I thought you said he wouldn't be ready to start building for 2 to 3 years. So I was just confused by that. Does he have 6 months to start building, or does he have 2 to 3 years to start building?
It would be our intent and recommendation that from the date the purchase agreement is signed and he acquires the property, he would have 6 months to start construction. I know he's not ready for 2 to 3 years. Certainly, if he's not ready, he can come back with a proposal in 2 to 3 years, but.
Granted, it hadn't been sold to somebody else or something.
So if I understand this is a consideration for a sale of property only this evening. If there's a contract, does that come back then to city councils for approval based on the language which you would do, or is it just moving forward? So I'm just trying to understand the next step if this moves forward with council this evening. Mr. Buds?
I think there's two ways that we can accomplish that. One is if there is a motion to direct that those agreements be prepared and that they be signed by certain individuals, as long as the form is approved by the manager and myself. We have done that way historically, knowing what the intentions are of council. That would probably be my recommendation. If, on the other hand, you want to see the document, you could certainly direct that it be prepared and put on the next council agenda. Either of those is acceptable.
I think that, from the discussion, I understand what's going to be proposed. I don't know that it needs to come back to council, or for myself, but maybe council will. Drafting the agreement so it can move forward. Councilman Lord, you had a follow-up
Yeah,
question?
I did. Just wanted to convey that once he signs the contract, I'm assuming he's responsible for all maintenance on the property at that time.
Correct, yep.
Thank you.
Maintenance and taxes.
Other questions or comments? Final comment, Mr. Cochran, or regarding the consideration then? They ask us for council to approve the sale of the property, is that correct?
Yep, correct.
Okay, as proposed. Any other comments? Then we're, Councilman Lamore.
Make a motion to convey parcel 49-00644-000 at 634 Church Street, Monroe, Michigan 48161 to Mr. Daryl Horton for a sum of $2,500 under the condition that a building permit be pulled within 6 months of said approval.
Second.
Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilman Felder, on item 4377, the consideration of sale of city-owned property, 634 Church Street. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Felder?
Yes.
Steelgrave? Vining? Germaini? Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
I have no further items this evening, Your Honor.
Council comments is next, and it is December, so we start with precinct 6. Councilman Felder, before you start, I see we have some new people here. I see we have some young ladies in the back of the class. I'm just going to ask quickly, are you with schools in our community? Don't leave, because when I get done chatting, I might ask to chat with you as well. Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. We finally wrapped up our public art policy. I'm certainly found that I'm happy that we found a way to move forward to make our community more beautiful. I'd like to thank Mr. Vanasacker for his work on this one. As I recall, this is one of the first assignments he got when he was first hired. So I'm sure he's glad to have this one chalked up on the board and behind him. But we are certainly grateful for the work that he has done. A lot of good information I think we received regarding the surveys tonight. Some points on education, arts, and culture, some points on vibrant downtowns. I think it's probably pointed to note that we had 2,600 people in our community over the last 3 days for a series of performances. There is a concert going on as we speak tonight in our downtown, and there is also going to be one this weekend as well. So for all the people who answered the way they did on the surveys, please avail yourselves of the opportunities that we currently have available within our community. So thank you so much, Your Honor.
Very good. Councilwoman Stilgrave.
Thank you, Your Honor. This Saturday at my flower shop in Debsboro, we are having a toy, food, and toiletry drive that will be distributed to the shelters, church pantries, and any other organization that may need some additional help. We are wanting to fill at least 4 trucks. And that is Saturday from 9 to 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Vining.
No comment this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. To echo Andrews, the Nutcracker was last weekend, and those kids did a phenomenal job. I couldn't believe the cast, and Andrew got on stage and did a great job as well. But very impressed with the talent we have in our area. And the e-newsletter, the number 3 came out, and thank you. That was wonderful as well. I like the way they're flowing. And thank you for all the work, Florence. Oh, she left. Thank you. Oh, there you are. Thank you for all the work on the survey. There's a lot of good information in there. Thank you. That's all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll echo that same comment. Thank you, Florence. That was a great presentation on your part, and certainly will be helpful in our, when we have our discussion with the CPC on certain things that we're going to be pursuing in the future here. Want to say the holiday lights still look spectacular. I do have a few questions regarding that, though. When do we plan on taking those down? And is there a certain time frame we should be maybe keeping them up a little bit longer? Because I know a lot of people really appreciate them, especially this year. I've heard a lot of great comments about them. That's one question. Another compliment to the city on the house on North Monroe Street is finally gone. Thank you. I appreciate that. It was a huge blight on our part here. And also don't want to forget December 7th, this upcoming week. It was a memory in our country's past that it's the 82nd anniversary of World War II for our country. And obviously there's possibly still some veterans surviving that war, but please don't forget to thank a veteran. That's all I have.
Thank you. Just a couple follow-ups. I think I'll start with the survey. I think the information is always valuable, and now it's what we do with it. So I think we have an obligation and some responsibility as council to really to review that in depth and come back prepared when we meet with the manager and the administration and maybe it's at a time when we lead into our goals and objectives, or even a time before that. And then, of course, we have to go, all follows that is our budget and where we put resources, and then the commitment of our personnel and what we might find as things that we move into or adjust or as we currently are. So I want to thank Florence for always the hard work and enjoyable to work together. And the presentation was fabulous. The downtown, I think that it was stated about the Reverations Center of the Arts and the Nutcracker, but there's many other activities that are going on, as Councilman Felder stated, and Councilwoman Germaini and others, that there's an opportunity to come downtown. Councilman Moore's comment on how long will the lighted elements from our hometown holiday lights, how long will they stay up? We usually wait through the first of the year, and then it's kind of as the weather permits. If we're going to get 3 weeks of heavy snow and we have a couple days, our DPS unit starts to move at that point versus just waiting and waiting till May or something. That's never happened. And it never will. But the idea is, there's still activities going on downtown. So I really encourage people to come downtown. And we had Small Business Saturday here, and that came up. And there's still shops that are open. There are holiday seasons, many shops, many places to shop, but also to eat. And then your family and your friends come into town. Please bring them downtown and just show them the great hometown holiday lights displays and activities, the places to sit, take photos, and share the season here in our historic downtown. So I guess the answer, Councilman Moore, is usually it's right after the first of the year as we start to see some transition, but then it's kind of like weather related as well. And I can't speak for administration or our director of public services, but they kind of do that. So, but go ahead.
Well, just to carry on to that, I know that there were some residents that were suggesting that maybe take down the holiday lighting, but keep up, like, for instance, like snowflakes, things like that are reminders of winter, to keep our downtown a little bit more beautiful during the, so to speak, dark times of winter.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that they're kind of some of the last things that come down, the banners that have the winter theme, but also the lights. They usually work on the larger elements because they take work to do and safety for that. But the lights that are on the poles and that do last, stay longer. I think they're the last to go. So I appreciate that. Clerk Treasurer Lavoie.
I just have a couple of announcements this evening. Tax bills I know many received them today, so they should be arriving in mailboxes the next couple of days. They also are available online for anyone who chooses wants to see the number or pay online. You can do all of that. Of course, our office is always available Monday through Friday to answer your phone calls. So please feel free to contact us if you have questions about your taxes. Another thing I was making a note of here is this evening, one of the items passed on the consent agenda was the council calendar for the coming year. And just wanted to take note that there are a number of special meetings designated on that calendar. A couple will occur on Saturdays. There's one or two on a non-council, non-traditional council Monday. So I just wanted to point that out to everyone. Those dates are listed online as the year progresses. We also have where our agendas and minutes are. The clerk's office posts all of the notices online as well. So again, there's several different places you can check it. And once again, you can always call the clerk's office or stop by and we'll help you get the information that you're looking for. I think that's it for tonight.
Very good. City Manager Robinson, comments this evening?
I don't have any comments this evening.
At this time, it's citizens' comments, and just as I always say, mindful of the rules of the chamber, your opportunity to come to the podium, state your name, jurisdiction of residence, and 3 minutes to make your comments if you wish to do so. Before I entertain those, I'm looking to the back. So stand up, ladies, please. Because what school are you from? We're in Middle College. So this is the time of year we start to see some of the, I'll say, assignments from the high schools or the Monroe Middle College, and to come because you're here because you have to attend a governmental session. Is that correct? Council meeting or county meeting?
We have a civic engagement project.
Yep.
So we had this as a choice. We could also do like volunteering or put up like a flyer for a cause or something.
So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but of course I do this because some people that are here we've seen this as council members, and some here may not have, but also an impact of those who are watching are going to be seeing you as well to hear and see what is going on at the middle college, but also at the schools. So your civic engagement has come to this session. Will you be back again? Maybe. Okay.
I know. Definitely next year I'll be back.
Okay.
For like a year, 100%.
So before we move on for comments, before you leave this evening, if you have questions about, well, how did this work or why was this that way, please come up and you can see myself or any of the council members or Clerk Lavoie to, procedurally of how she, manages and what her role here is, the record keeping and documenting, keep sure that we have our minutes correct and everything is retained and available for later if people wish. But if you have questions, please come up and can walk you through that as well. So thank you for being here. I hope to see you at a future meeting. Thank you. Yeah. So now we'll go to other citizens' comments, and ladies, you're welcome to come up as well. But any comments from those present here this evening? Any comments from those present? Florence.
Florence Buchanan, former City of Monroe resident, currently residing at 5442 Poplar Drive, Monroe Township. I just want to agree with Brian. The lights downtown, because when I go home, I'm going south, so I don't see the lights very often. But I tell you what, that Christmas tree is stunning. So I just want to compliment whoever is responsible for decorating the downtown. It's just beautiful. It just gets you in a whole different spirit. So as long as they can stay lit, I'm all for it, even though I'm not a resident. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. There's work that it always takes extra hands, right? We had many volunteers. We had staff that volunteered, the staff that puts them up, but it couldn't be done without the sponsors that we have. So when you go there and you see one of those lighted elements there, whether it's the new one, the gold deer, or the Santa that's sitting there, or one of the things you put your face in and take photos and have fun with your family, there's a sign that's next to it, and it recognizes the sponsors for their support of being able to purchase these items, and they're owned. And I say that the Department of Public Services yard currently, the pole barn out there is starting to look like Bronner's with them all stacked up, and they are neat as can be when you go in there. You know what they are, and they were in place. So they're doing a great job in that. So Florence, I appreciate the comment, and there's many hands that are involved, and so I'm sure they'll hear you. If not, I'll share your comments as well. Other comments from those present here this evening? Any public comments? Seeing none, a motion, please.
Motion that we enter into closed session for the purpose of land acquisition and discussion of litigation involving the following parties: CAR, OFTH 172, Twin Solutions, Webb, and Desmond.
It's a motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Steelgrave to go into, enter into closed executive session for the purpose of land acquisition and attorney quarterly litigation update for the items stated by the council. Clerk, please call the roll.
Stillgrave? Vining? Jermaine? Lamore?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. So